there. In this video I'm going to explain how you can create bracelets and rings using FluidDesigner for 3D printing running under Blender. So I'm assuming you've installed the application. First of all, if we go to the Groups library, so click on Groups and Group Library, notice there's a couple of folders here: bracelet sizes and bracelet cross sections, ring sizes and ring cross sections. The rings and the bracelets are basically the same idea, so I'm just going to look at bracelets. So if I go to bracelet sizes, there's only one object there, and if I just click on that, just point outside the box there and click, I will get that object. Now what we've done there is we've created this kind of dummy object here, bracelet size, and so I can delete that. And then we've got a list essentially. These group objects are basically a list. And if I switch on the view for the inner diameter, B for bracelet, inner diameter 80 millimeters, I've got that object. And we can see in the properties panel that it's 8 centimeters by 8 centimeters, in other words 80 millimeters. Now if we want to add some thickness to that, we need some bevel objects. Now at the moment the bevel objects that are listed are just all the different diameters, so we don't want to do that. What we want to do is to go back to Group Library. So we've done bracelet sizes. What we want is bracelet cross sections, the bevel objects. So there are rectangular ones and round ones. I'm going to select the rectangular one, and again click outside the box and highlight that object and delete it, because that's just a dummy object. Now what we've done is we've added a whole host of cross sections here, and so we've got a list of different sizes, some of them 1 millimeter by, some of them 1.5, some of them 2 millimeters by. Now the important thing about these objects, if I actually switch a few of them on in view, so if I just go over to this panel and just switch a few of them on, and oops, I've switched the wrong ones on. I want the cross sections, not the actual bracelet outline itself. So if we switch those on, if we zoom in here, these are the cross-section bevel objects, and notice the important thing about them is they're all offset to the left of the y-axis. And that's really important because we want to maintain the inner diameter here as 80 and put any additional thickness on the outside. Now you'll see that better when I go and show you some objects from the object library. Okay, so that's one way of creating simple outlines for bracelets. If I go to File and New, and I'll just switch on the screencast keys while I remember. Okay, so if we're in the object library, if we go to bracelets and we look for 80 millimeters internal diameter, so that's this object here, and we click that and click OK and just click outside the box, what we've got there, if we open up the properties panel, is a default thickness bevel object of 1 by 6 millimeters, and notice there aren't any other objects there. So if we delete that, we can just see the basic curve, and this is in fact a NURBS curve. So if I just go into edit mode, you can see there are control points there, so it's just a NURBS curve. But if we want to apply some thickness to this, one of the ways of doing it is if we're in the objects library, if we go to the 3T template cross section bevel objects, there are 4 bevel objects which are specifically for bracelets, 2 for rings, and then the others are really for other things like pendants and earrings and other items. It's very important you choose the right one, as you'll see. So if I select the bracelets one and click OK, what that's done is place this, again, it's a Bezier curve, and it's actually 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, the default one. It just places that in the center of the screen. If I highlight my bracelet now and select this bevel object, you'll see that it adds a thickness of 1 by 1 to my bracelet. And if we highlight the bevel object itself, that's this rectangle here in the middle, and then if we change the Y dimension, and I'm just changing the Y by scrolling the mouse, you can see it makes the bracelet deeper, so I could actually just type in 10 millimeters there. Now what's really important, and what you must be careful that you do, is that this bevel object here, when we change the X dimension, it should put thickness on the outside of the bracelet and the bevel object itself should move to the left. So as I increase the size there, can you see what effect's happening both in the middle of the screen? You can see the rectangle changing, but what's most important is the thickness goes on the outside of the object. That's really important with rings, but it's also important with bracelets because we want to maintain the inner diameter as 80 millimeters. We don't want that to change, but more so with rings. So it's very important that you choose the right bevel object here when you're working with bracelets and rings. Now, oops, I didn't want to go to open, I wanted to do new. So if we go to a new screen there, and again I'll just switch on the screencast keys. Now we have got some other bracelets in here as well. So if we go to bracelets here, I'll explain just how some of these patterns actually work. Now you can link with these patterns with the, it's just loading very, very slowly my system here at the moment. There's no designs coming up here. I know which design I want, but it's not displaying. Oh, they're displaying now. Okay, so I'm going to use this Celtic knot bracelet 4-leaf pattern. And so if I click OK, and I just scrolling back and clicking outside of the box so that it centers in the middle of the screen. And if I open up my properties panel this time and go to modifiers, essentially what we've got are 3 modifiers here. We've got set the columns, which is an array, set the rows, which is an array, and set the bracelet, which is a curve. Now at the moment, the inner diameter, the default size of this, the inner diameter is 65 millimeters. If I wanted 80 millimeters, I could always go back to the object library, go back to bracelets, and let's hope it loads a little bit quicker this time. It's not doing, my system's working very slow. Okay, so if I want the 80 millimeter bracelet, I can just click that, and then if we just remove the bevel object from that, so we just treat that as the default one, what we can now do is to wrap this Celtic knot around this, what is essentially just a Bezier curve. I didn't want to move it from the center there. You must keep it at the center. So I've got my Celtic knot design. If I go to modifiers, set the bracelet size, I can change it now to the B inner diameter of 80 millimeters, and you'll see it will reset to that. So that's how you can set the bracelet size. I'm not going to change the rows. I don't want to have 2 or 3 rows, but that's what the rows do. And again, that's just an array modifier. I want to change the columns, so I need to fill out my bracelet basically. Now the number for the count will vary depending upon the pattern and the diameter, and it will also vary depending upon this relative offset. So I can change my pattern by changing my relative offset here, and I'm going to set it back at 0.9, and that's how you can create a bracelet. Now what's really important here, if we zoom in, if you notice that the Celtic knot pattern is not touching the inside of the curve, it's actually on the inside of it, and the reason for that is the positioning of it. And the way to sort that out and make it exactly 80 millimeters on the inside is to go to view and top view, press the tab key to go into edit mode, and if you just zoom in, essentially what we want to do is move this up until the bottom of it just touches the x-axis. And I know if I go to the transform panel over here, that's moving by 1 millimeter in the transform panel here, and if I type 0.5 millimeters there, I'll line that up exactly with the x-axis. Now you can do it by switching off the snap and moving it, but that's a very important thing to do, because when I go out now, notice that the bracelet is on the outside, or it's just touching the diameter of 80 millimeters. So that's how you can set the diameter of 80 millimeters. Now if you go to our website on the internet at Shapeways, you can see lots of different bracelet designs that we've produced using FluidDesigner for 3D printing in this kind of way. Okay, so thank you for watching this video.